Okay, I think let us begin today's session. So yeah, thank you students for attending today's Q&A with Hans and Maggie, who's an alumni from DID. And yeah, so today we'll just be answering, again, for those who have been part of our Q&As, we'll just be answering any questions that you have. So at any time, you may leave your questions into the Zoom chat and then we will kind of address them one by one as we go through today's session. But so to give everyone a little bit of time to think through what questions you may have, we can start the session by just having a quick introduction from both Hans and Maggie about who they are and kind of what they do, so that you have a better idea and perhaps be better able to come up with questions that you may want to ask them. So perhaps could we start with Hans to just do a short introduction of yourself?
Okay, thanks, Desiree. Hi, everyone. I'm Hans. I'm an associate professor at the Division of Industrial Design. At the same time, I'm also the founder of Hans Studio. So I practice design as an independent designer. I also co-founded Start many years ago with a group of my former classmates from the Division of Industrial Design as well. So happy to see all of you here. If you have any questions, please ask.
Thanks. Maggie?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Maggie. I'm DID alumni, graduated in 2019, and I'm currently an innovation designer in Procter & Gamble. So Procter & Gamble, I work mainly for brands like Febreze and Joy. So these are your air care, like air freshener, dish detergent kind of products. But I work more in the front end innovation. So, really on new to world packaging and product concepts. So that's what I do.
Thanks, Maggie. And of course, you'll have also Ben and myself, who are both TAs in DID and also alumni of the school to help kind of facilitate today's session. So yeah, maybe just to start things off, maybe a question for Maggie. I guess looking at the work that you're doing right now in P&G, would you be able to share perhaps just one key takeaway that you had from DID that you see kind of helping you in your journey as a designer at P&G now?
One key takeaway from DID, I would say DID has pushed me to be quite critical be a critical thinker. And I think that's quite important, especially as like a front end designer, where we are not supposed to just be kind of redesigning based on the existing blueprint, but our job is to kind of break out of the status quo, to challenge what's already out there. So I think DID has always championed kind of more of not just accepting things as they are, but trying to see how things could be different and better. So yeah, that's one key thing.
Yeah, I mean, that also, I guess, relates a little bit about what maybe something that potentially Hans can answer, which is that, I don't know, how do you see kind of design being used to question assumptions and kind of break assumptions and help with critical thinking and understanding about the things around us?
Yeah, certainly so. If you talk about breaking assumptions, and I think a few words come to mind, a few keywords come to mind. I think one of them is certainly the idea of reframing. One of them is also diverging thinking. Yeah, so these words usually point towards how we use creativity to innovate. And I think certainly although creativity is not bound by a certain domain, like design or art, but certainly design in a very large extent, gives you the room to practice, yeah, and to also use creativity in the ways that helps you think differently about things. I think one of the key things about design education is that it's a very open-ended curriculum, particularly when you work on projects. right? And when you work on projects that are really open-ended, there's no right or wrong answer. So you are pushed, to frame things on your own, to discover problems. So you're not necessarily given a task or a problem to solve. I think the key thing here, as Maggie described, is really, to be able to even find the correct problems to solve. And sometimes when your client or someone else gives you a problem to solve, you're able to tell the person or to find out, hey, maybe that is not that's not a key issue. That's not a key underlying issue, and perhaps we should look at the issue in a totally different way, right? And the problem here is being defined differently from what it was initially. So those are really important skills for a designer, not just a designer, but anyone who is keen to use creativity to solve problems in the fields.
Hans, do you have an example perhaps of a studio platform that you teach or a student project that you could share to kind of illustrate a little bit about what you mean by redefining the problem, or
Mm.
do you have any examples to share?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I guess that can be applied across different mediums, different things. For example, I think this semester in my studio, we are collaborating with Changi Airport. So the studio's brief is for the students to think about how to reapply or reuse some of the elements that is being uh, uh, how do I put it? Some of the interior elements of Terminal 2, which is under renovation, as some of you know it. So Terminal 2 in Changi Airport is closed at the moment for a full-blown renovation. And so there are no flights flying in and out of T2. And they will take about 2 years to renovate it. So we went down to the terminal before it was gutted. And we went around to select materials, and interesting things that was formerly used in the terminal, right? And to think of ways to kind of reuse them in an interesting manner or in a meaningful manner when the airport is reinstated or renovated. So we're developing a range of our collection, right? And these are potential things that people could also buy and to bring home a piece of Changi Airport. With them from Terminal 2. So the idea, a simple way to do that, of course, is to think about how to reuse these materials in a very straightforward manner, right? But I think for the students, we try to go one step ahead and to ask, what is meaningful, what is relevant. It's not just using wood to redesign, like a bench again, or to use some of the materials like tiles, to redesign things that's related to how granite tiles are being done previously. But for us, it's really to question the material and to think of new applications that might be interesting and relevant and meaningful, and more importantly, to bring out the narrative of Changi Airport and Terminal 2 into the products that we are doing. So there's a lot of things coming together. It is not linear. Design is not a linear process, right? It's almost like, I always like to use it. It's almost like a Venn diagram. You're always finding, right, within the Venn diagram, the parts that intersect, right? And that's where the gold mine is to some extent.
So it's finding the different directions to still go and like get to that gold mine at the end. Thanks, Hans. So we have a question coming in from Louis. So perhaps I could get Hans to answer this first before I get Maggie to share a little bit about her experience. But so his question was whether the course is very much focused on projects and whether the students get to create the actual product itself, or do projects usually stop at prototyping stage?
So it really depends on how do you define prototyping, right? So prototypes can be very raw and iterative, and that happens in the design process. Prototypes also can be quite finalized as maybe, you might think of it as a proof of concept as a prototype. So it really depends on how you define the word prototype. But at the same time, to answer your question generally, I think one of the key things about the division of industrial design is we don't normally stop at the conceptual stage. And even at the conceptual stage, we require students to prototype, to iterate in the actual maybe in the actual material or in the actual application, or to put things out in actual context to test. Yeah, and it's also always driven by feasibility and possible of application, right? So we don't design in a vacuum. It's not theoretical. It's always realistic in that sense, right? And for most projects, yeah, we try to aim for finish that is towards the end, meaning something that you could test with end users, right? Being completed. And at the same time, we do that also because a lot of projects we do in collaboration with a lot of industry partners. Yeah, and that requires us to, put up projects that is feasible and also desirable and also manufacturable to a very large extent. So there are many things to consider. Yeah, and certainly we don't stop at a very conceptual state of prototyping, if that's what you mean. So maybe Maggie can give some example of experiences at DID working with projects as such.
Okay. So for me, it's really been dependent on the project. So previously, when I've done more like spatial design sort of projects, so the one that I did was with Shiseido. So it was on designing their travel retail space in Expo. So in that situation, I mean, naturally, kind of you're constrained by not being able to prototype one-to-one scale, right? Like you can't create the whole expo size exhibit. But what we are encouraged to do is to create scaled models. So to give a real like kind of a sense of what the space could be like in a three-dimensional perspective. So you get to look at the scaled model and get a closer, more realistic feel of it, as opposed to just creating it in a digital environment and like toggling around in digital space. So for spatial design, it's been like that. But for other projects, let's say my thesis project where I designed like like a diffuser, right? For that, it was really like hands-on kind of hacking existing mechanisms out there, and to see what could be different about it based on my manipulations. So at the end of the day, it was really about kind of, you know, taking what works and kind of making your own modifications to get the desired outcome or a new spin on what exists out there. Yeah, for air freshener.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know whether that answers your question, Louis, but we have also dropped in the link to our course PDF if you kind of want to find out more. But yes, in short, majority of our course is quite project based, and the projects kind of differ based on what is offered in that semester. So yeah, then like Hans said, like I mean, it can go to different levels of prototyping depending on also how you define what a prototype actually is lah. Yeah, okay. So we have one next question from Chuman. What are the key differences between working as a design professional and studying design as a student? So perhaps Maggie, you could take this question first. Is there a shift in your mindset in how you approach projects between when you were a student versus when you are working?
Okay. So for me, as I've entered kind of like the working world, I work more closely with people from different fields. So as of right now, I work very closely with chemists, with people who have mechanical, like pure mechanical engineering background, because it takes, a whole team of people from different backgrounds to bring a product to life, right? And while like DID has given me kind of the skill set to not just be working in silo as a designer, but to consider other factors, it's a bit different when like day to day you have to kind of really face the technical limitations that people from different fields bring up. That's what I want to say. So it might feel like a constraint at the start, but as you get to get up to speed with other people's perspectives and learn to balance it with your own need as a designer to challenge what's been established, I think it's just learning how to navigate that, and not being like, oh, I dismiss your point of view. I just need to push for the new I just want to reinvent, but there is a way to get the best of both worlds. It's just you need to learn how to collaborate. Yeah. Or even like spot opportunities in what might be a limitation. Yeah.
Perhaps,
Yeah.
Hans, were you gonna chip in something?
Yeah, I wonder if Desiree and Benjamin would like to chip in as well. I mean, it shouldn't be just two-person answering the questions. You guys also alumni of DID and experience, really interesting experience working as well as professionals. Yeah, so I welcome you to talk about these things. Of course, I think it's interesting for students to learn about, what happens, when they graduate and how is it like, practicing as a designer professionally.
Ben, you have any immediate answers for that?
I think one of the immediate ones is in school, right? You learn how to learn, because a lot of time there's a lot of new technologies, like say new software, new way of doing things. So you're always constantly learning. So in school, I guess you get used to picking up things very quickly, especially when you are collaborating with other people from other fields. Let's say, for example, for some students who, let's say, work with data scientists, coders, developers, and even those medical people, right? You have to pick up their field very quickly because you have to understand how they talk. Like, for example, some of the technical terms that they use. So all in all, I say you got to be quite comfortable with learning new things and being not too sure at the start, and then you learn what you need to learn from that field. Learn the terms that they use, what they're talking about, and then from there, use your design skills to see what kind of problems they are facing. So in that sense, I would say NUS course actually prepare you quite well for that. Some of the things are not taught per se, but then you have to pick them up along the way so that you can become a good designer. Yeah, some of the softwares, I would say.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Actually, Dawn, I see that you're on a call. Dawn is also another tutor at NUS. I'm not sure whether you're going to jump in or whether turning on your mic is convenient for you, but let me know.
I'm driving it. so yeah, so let me know.
Okay, sure. Okay, yeah, I mean, maybe just chipping in from myself. It's, to me, it almost feels like one major mindset shift between being a student, like a design student, versus being a designer who's working right in the industry, is really that I don't know whether confidence is the right word, but as a design student, you kind of still have leeway to feel your way around, and people are generally more forgiving, right? When they know that, okay, you're kind of a student, you're still learning as you go, but when you kind of get into that industry, you almost immediately have to, even if you don't feel confident, you have to appear confident and that you know your stuff, even if you may be like, oh no, what am I doing? So that to me was kind of like the key shift in mindset for me. Okay, so yeah, I hope that answers your question, Truman. You have multiple different perspectives from four of us. And okay, so perhaps you have one next question from Lewis. I think Hans will be coming back in a bit, but Lewis was asking whether will we learn engineering and technical skills to build our prototypes, or is the DID degree more focused on design thinking and design skills? Ben, would you be able to answer this question a little bit? I can grab the course timetable.
I think the course timetable is a very generic type of like what are the modules that you'll be taking. But like what I said just now, right? A lot of times you got to learn a lot of kind of like softwares by yourself. So I think the current year ones and year twos, right, they are exposed to a lot of coding also. So actually some of the students actually, went down to take those modules from the computing school. So they're actually able to code their prototypes out. So with this kind of skills, right, you have more, with all these additional skill sets, you'll be able to bring your prototype to the next level. So if, let's say, for example, if you are only able to do a screen that is static, that is on from Illustrator or Figma, right, then people will be just like browsing through your app and seeing the different interactions. But if you are able to, let's say, use Figma to to make the prototype come alive, then basically you can send the link to your tutors, and then the tutors can actually see the app and see all the different interactions and stuff. So I would say that you will be able to learn more than just prototyping skills. And definitely the basics like the design thinking and the design skills will be inculcated throughout all the 4 years. But I would say that there will be increasingly more engineering skills. So it's like coding, and then you'll be learning a little bit about material science and stuff like this in the first 2 years. Yeah. So I would say it's quite a broad range of items. But if you have interest in certain areas, right, I would say you have to use your own initiative to go and pick up the in-depth knowledge of that field.
Thanks, Ben. Hans, would you be able to chip in on this? We are currently addressing Lewis's question about whether in DID will the students learn more engineering and technical skills, or is the degree more focused on design thinking and design skills?
We go in depth for both, certainly. Yeah, in the first year in the fundamentals, I'm not sure if it's been covered already. We equip students with fundamental skills, and the fundamental skills include technical skills. So in the first year, there are small projects where you can learn, I think like Ben mentioned, you learn Figma. So that is a technical program where you use to design interfaces. Yeah, you also learn programming and coding, how to use Arduino to do simple coding, and how to make things that move, controlled by sensors and stuff like that. Yeah, so we do have these very small snippets of project-based learning for you to learn and pick up these basic skills. That also includes like visual literacy. That's related to visual communication. You also get to learn about how to experiment in materials and things like that. How do you control form? Yeah, so all these things are covered in the first year in very small project-based learning. And then in the second year, then you go on to bigger projects and more holistic projects, and then you get a chance to apply these skills that you have learned in the first year. We also have very specific modules on these things. For example, because of our recent merger with the college, in the whole college. So we have modules that are taught about architecture. We also have some modules that are taught about engineering as well. So for example, you have modules. There's one module called design, kind of like a Mechathon or something like that. Sorry, I can't remember the title of the module. But in this module, you learn about electronics and electrical engineering, right? But in a fun way, so you get to work in a team with engineers to build like a remote control car, that goes through obstacle course. Yeah, so we have interesting things like that now that we never used to have before, before this merger with engineering. We also have a module on artificial intelligence. Yeah, we also have a module on sustainable future that is led by architecture professors, right? So we have a more holistic curriculum now compared to before, which was already, I think, quite broad-based.
Okay, thanks for that, Hans. I've also sent in the chat the curriculum structure if anybody hasn't yet seen that from the DID website on the NUS page. Okay, so moving on maybe to the next question from Vina, who mentioned that, I guess just now I can't remember whether maybe Hans or Maggie mentioned design engineer. So the question coming from Vina was that, are there a lot of hybrid roles in design currently? And do we have any examples? Maybe Maggie, would you be able to share a little based on maybe some of your colleagues or?
Oh, like I can't speak for like the whole industry, but at least within P&G innovation design, we are kind of looking out for people with more blended skill sets. So design engineer, what I really mean is, yes, he has kind of a engineering background and also design background, but it's not so much so that he can, create functional 3D packaging designs, but more so because he was hired for a sustainability design role. So with sustainability design, we've got a lot of factors involving manufacturing, involving like scaling things up. And that, that really kind of goes into a little bit of an engineering realm. So I would say that there is an interest at least in the domain of sustainability, for people who have that design lens of like consumer experience and also the engineering lens of like, can we make it happen? Yeah. And also, I think some interest in people who have blended skill sets in digital and also some physical, because, you know, Procter & Gamble, our products are traditionally, you know, just a bottle of soap. But right now, it's the question is like, are experiences going to be more blended? Are we going to, you know, it's not just a bottle of soap, but also like your experience with the brand online, things like that. So, yeah.
Thanks, Maggie. Ben, would you like to chip in as a creative technologist and your blended role?
Yeah, so when I graduated from NUS, right, I think I'm just a product designer. So but along the way when I was working, right, I get to work with a lot of engineers and developers, and that's where I picked up coding skills. And then with the additional knowledge about coding, right, I call myself as a creative technologist. So I'm able to do coding and also do a little bit of the design stuff. So I would say I'm like in the middle of the two, in the middle of design and engineering. And then I sometimes serve as a bridge between the two as well. So sometimes the designers would want certain effects or certain way that they envision the end users will experience the product. But then the engineers they talk in a different way. They talk about MMs, they talk about tolerance speed, and maybe about if it's app development, they're talking about like would it be possible to swipe the thing and then you see only half and stuff like this. So I would serve as a bridge between the two of them. So I understand what the designer wants, and then I translate it into a language that the engineers will understand. Yeah. And vice versa. Sometimes the engineers have difficulty explaining to the designers what is their problem that they are facing. Like for example, they want let's say the designer wants certain way of showing a picture, and then the engineer will say, hey, but my current problem is like this, like this, like this. And then, but to the designers, right, they don't understand what the engineers are talking about. So I will serve as the translator and then translate into a mental model that the designers will understand. I will need to talk in like Photoshop terms, and hey, you know, you like in Photoshop, you got to do the blurred edges and stuff like this. Then, oh, that's what you want. Okay, then that's some of the roles that I play now.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe that kind of hybrid roles help a lot in translation and kind of bridging different sectors, especially if they're from very contrasting things. Hans, you have anything to chip in for this question?
Maybe just in a broader view, I mean, designer is no longer an applied artist. We are kind of called applied artists since the start of the Industrial Revolution, right? And then slowly the role morphed into the role of industrial design, designing for mass manufacture. But I think in the recent years, in the past 15 to 20 years, yeah, the role of design has exploded into beyond recognition, right? So we do many things. So in essence, the role of a designer is essentially hybrid. We do need to have a lot of domain knowledge. We do need to communicate with a lot of people, not just the end user. To a very large extent, in many big companies, we are kind of like the aggregator or the network or the connector, right? And we serve different roles, and we need to understand different things in different ways and to communicate them to different people. So it's not a simple task, right? But at the same time, it's something quite fulfilling, and you'll be able to learn different things and apply across a different spectrum. And also, depending on which domain you go into and which area of design you go into, you will tend to be more developed in those areas. For example, if you work in a technology company, you might be more well developed in the technology side of things. If you work in a soft goods company, you'll be more well-rounded in the soft goods sides of things. So the domain is huge as well. Anything from a physical object to furniture to to an interface to service and systems, yeah, to medical work, to also very to branded stuff as well. So the field is really huge, right? And I think one of the things about the division of industrial design that is we do offer a wide variety of domains and projects for you to work with across the 4 years. Yeah, and you, to some extent, you're able to make some decisions about the type of projects you want to do, and hopefully you can create a very our system creates a very flexible curriculum for you to be able to chart your own journey within the 4 years that you are experiencing at the division.
Yeah, so perhaps Vina, if you join our course, then you can also potentially create your own hybrid design role and skill sets for yourself and what you are interested in, and also what may be something that you want to do for your career path. Yeah, so I've also, if for anyone who's interested to just learn a little bit more, I've also dropped in a link for the design skills framework for design, just to just have a check out the different kind of pathways and different roles of design if you're interested. Okay, so I think that's all the questions we have in the chat. Ben, do you have any questions on your end? Did anybody send you anything? No?
No, don't have.
Okay. Oh, okay. There's a question from Lewis about the curriculum structure. Can you choose not to do an FYP? Hans? No. Right?
That's correct. So by FYP, I think you mean the final thesis, project. Yeah. So in a new curriculum that is being edited out, by editing it out, I mean it has been translated into a specialization. So a student, can choose to do studio platform projects all the way to year 4 and graduate. At the same time, they can also choose to do a final year project if they want to in the final 4th year of their study. And this will, if they pass, and that will amount to a specialization. So we have 3 specializations for you to choose from. Yeah, so that's what I mean by creating a more flexible curriculum, as well, right? With this new curriculum structure that we have.
Okay, thanks for that, Hans. Okay, any other questions that we have from the students? Anything about curriculum, school life, any specific projects that maybe you saw online that you wanted to find out more about? Or you can also ask any questions that maybe unrelated completely to DID that you're interested to find out from Hans or Maggie, Ben.
Maybe Maggie can tell us a bit about school life, a bit less, since we've talked a lot about the curriculum. We also talked about being a professional designer, and what she has learned in school. Yeah, maybe she can share a little bit of her experience over 4 years, in the non-academic things that she experienced.
Wow, school life.
It was
I
all
feel
about
like
work, is it?
I feel like school life was, at least for me, I'm not saying it's, I mean, for me, it was really like design life, and life was just like 100% work-life integration. I know people like within my batch who managed to they wanted to compartmentalize those two, and they did. But for me, it was a good thing to integrate it because my closest friends were all in industrial design. So like work life, eat, play was all together. Yeah, so for me, it was like breathing and living in the studio. I mean, also like going out together, whether it's like going to exhibitions, going out just for fun, if you're working on like your project at night and then like 8 o'clock you get hungry, okay let's go down to, I don't know if that supper stretch is like still exists, but we just all go together, eat together, go back, like suddenly someone sees a funny video on YouTube, share, watch together, everyone crowd around. So that feeling of like having an ID family, I think it's quite unique to our course, I would say. I don't know if it's the same now, but it was like that for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, I don't know, I have a follow-up question that maybe the students might want to know, would be that how's the workload like? or perhaps not really how was the workload like, but maybe how you kind of managed the workload. Were there any reflections on that?
workload management, I would say, at least for design projects, I think the most critical thing is to ask yourself, what do you want to find out or achieve by a certain milestone? You know, like there's always like a critical question at each point of your project. And if you don't, sometimes if you don't ask the right questions, you can just like do work endlessly, just keep whacking, right, with no sense of direction. So I would say it got better for me, at least after I graduated, because I think when I was still a student, I was still more of like in the realm of just exploring as much as I can. Yeah, so yeah, if I could go back to, you know, that version of myself, I would like, hey, so what's the critical thing about this stage of your project? Yeah, that's something that I personally could have improved on as a student. Yeah, in terms of like managing workload.
Okay, another question from Lewis. Are there any interesting facilities that are open for DID students to use? Maggie, did you make use of any of the facilities in DID to do anything interesting outside of your project?
Interesting facilities. I sound like my life was really like steeped in work. But the first thing that comes to mind is this giant CNC machine. Yeah, so I had like a huge prototype, and then you know we have a 5-axis CNC. I don't know if it still exists. You know, but that was good because then I could do a huge like prototype. And that's not like kind of at your fingertips if you were to just be prototyping with a home-based 3D printer. It's a totally different feel. So for me, it was really that big CNC machine. Other interesting facilities. I mean, I also kind of like that there's like a outdoor element to the studio. I don't know if you guys can eat there now, but back then it just opened the studio. So we'll be able to see the sunset at like 7 p.m. and it's very scenic. So you've got your sunset melting at the back, and then everybody's just like eating together at that like outdoorsy space. So it felt very nice. So that was the homely aspect of the studio.
Hans, any facilities that you might want to highlight?
Facilities. I mean, it depends on what are you comparing it to. Because if you compare DID to most of the courses, like architecture, DID also has their own studio. A lot of we have a studio where students can work. They have space to, they have desk space to work. They have workshops to that support them in terms of model making. In the final year, you have your own desk, you know, because you're to give you space, yeah, for materials and model making, to complete your final year project. And so it's quite different, from a typical module, like from the arts and social science, where you're more transitory. You go from tutorials to tutorials, lectures to lectures, and you don't have like a home base. So I think that's one of the unique factors of having a studio-based learning, because you're very much kind of like planted in like a situation where there's a space that you can call your own, and interact with students who are working on different projects all around. You get to see someone doing something completely different. You get to help someone, when someone asks you to help. So in studio culture, you get to develop strong ties with classmates. Yeah, which I believe to some extent it is quite different, yeah, from some of the other faculties and other programs that do not have this kind of like setup.
Yeah, actually, I guess the most obvious facility is the studio, right? And then we kind of like, okay, interesting facilities means all the other funky things that we do, but actually we forgot that the studio is kind of like the main place where everything happens, and it's not as common outside lah in other faculties.
Yeah, actually that's true. Cause in my last year, I remember I just like set up shop, man, in one of the rooms. I just like, this corner is my prototyping zone. And it's just like so many different like prototypes all set up. I don't know if you get that luxury in other faculties, but that zone was mine for the year, and it was really nice. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I hope that answers your question, Lewis. So we have one question from Tingy. Perhaps Hans may be able to answer this, which is whether students need to put the ID as a first choice in order to get a chance to get into the course.
I mean, to get into any course at NUS or any course, university course, your choices does matter, right? That's why it's called choices. So, yeah. So I'm not sure about the context of your question, but maybe answer it by saying that uh, uh, if you put a choice, like a first choice, and you do get into the first choice of the course of your first choice, then you will be offered the first choice, right? No matter what course you put there, right? So you will be offered according to the choices that you put. So even so, if so, so please do indicate your choices really wisely, right? But if you are referring to, for example, a discretionary admission or like an appeal case, yeah, then we most of the time we only look at students who put, for example, in this case, ID as the first choice, right? Because if you're appealing for the course, it usually means that you really want to do the course, yeah, and the first choice matters a lot.
I think just to top up on what Han said, right? If let's say your first choice, second choice, and third choice, you're all accepted by all three different faculties, right? The admission office will be based on your will base it off your ranking. So after that, if 1, 2, 3 are okay, they will give you the first one.
But do we know whether, for example, if pushing this further, if I put another faculty as my first choice and I got into that faculty, and if I suddenly change my mind and say, oh, okay, I actually don't really want to go into this first choice, and ID was my second choice, would ID still be able to offer me a place if I had rejected my first choice?
It will be an appeal case to transfer course. Yeah, because it also depends on when this happens. You also risk, yeah, the program having filled all its numbers and its cohort, and we might not allow transfer cases as such already. So it really depends, yeah, on the processes that year. But I mean, suffice to say, you will be at a disadvantage.
Okay, so I guess short answer is that yeah, your choices are very important. The order of your choices, and yeah, they should really, I guess, reflect your level of interest for each of these different courses that you apply for. Okay, so on a related question from Lewis is, what do you look out for in prospective TID students? Hans?
In the admission requirements, you might already know that it's interview course. So almost all students need to go through the kind of interview, right, to get admission. So the interview consists of a few things. Yeah, number one is it's an interview, so you need to answer some questions. Number two is if you have a portfolio, we'll ask you to show aspects of your work. Yeah, or also to submit your portfolio if you have one, although it's not compulsory. Then the last thing is we also give you a small design exercise for you to try your hand at designing something or working on something. It is not a big project, right? But it's for us to kind of like give you an idea as well, right? What design really is, for you to experience it, right? So through this admission exercise, we are looking for students who are really motivated to do design. Yeah, because unlike most courses, which is lecture-based, tutorial-based, we are very hands-on module. So it requires a lot of work because it is project-based. There's no wrong answer. So a project is as rigorous as you want it to be, but you can always put in more work and strive to do better and get a better result. Yeah, so we are looking for students who are really, really have that mental mode or that mindset to do this, right? We are not looking for students who are already skilled because we will equip them with the necessary skills, yeah, for them to achieve what they want to achieve at the division.
Okay, thanks, Hans. So before I ask Hans a follow-up question on that, maybe students, looking at the time now, we have time for just one last question. So if you do have any other questions, like a burning question to ask, do put it in the chat. Okay. So yeah, perhaps a follow-up question to that, Hans, is that if, let's say, I come in with zero design background and I want to still kind of put up like a portfolio of some sort, but it's completely, not design like projects lah. And maybe I'm showing some parts of my hobby or my interest outside. What would you say is something that you would look out for in these kind of different portfolios that are not necessarily very design in nature?
Yeah, so in the portfolio that we asked for, it is not a design portfolio. So if you have a background in design and had designed things, be it objects or interfaces, or you can submit them. Right. At the same time, the portfolio we're asking for is really if you have some interesting or creative work to show that you have done before. So it can range from anything from maybe photography. You could also send in the drawings that you have made before, because you're maybe interested in illustration. You can show us digital work. You can show us, maybe your hobby is, cooking, and you do it quite creatively. So you can certainly do that as well. Maybe you're a streamer or YouTuber, and doing some really specific things that's quite interesting. You can show us as well. We have a lot of students also showing us, their drive in terms of entrepreneurship. Their web shops. They're selling things, making stuff. We really welcome that as well. We have also seen people who submitted videos or clips of them, dancing, for example, because is their passion, or also making music. So it really depends. And for us, it is not the craft that maybe matters, but is how we are really trying to suss out the attitude you have towards what you do.
Okay, thanks for that, Hans. So I think looking at the chat doesn't seem to have any other questions from the students. So I think we can conclude today's session. Do we have any last words of advice from Hans and Maggie for the prospective students?
Maybe we have some words of advice from Maggie, Benjamin, and Desiree.
I got one. I got a quick
Yes.
one. You left only 6 more days to apply, so make your choices soon.
Desiree, maybe.
Wow, I gonna reflected the arrow to me. I guess I don't know. A simple one is to kind of just trust your gut, I guess, especially for those who are not familiar with design at all, because it's not traditionally offered, right, in the education system. But perhaps based on my own experience, because I really just took the leap of faith in choosing DID. And yeah, it turned out great for me lah. And if you feel that you have this gut feeling that, hey, you're interested in doing something completely different, you don't really want to study things that you're used to, or if you just have any sort of small inkling that design could be for you, then yeah, trust your gut lah and see where that brings you lah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think mine is kind of like similar to that, in that for me, my advice is try to find enjoyment in the process, and not just think of the process of making or designing as this painful thing you need to push through to get to the end result, because 99% of your work you're gonna be in the process. So enjoy it. Yeah, make it enjoyable for yourself. Yeah, don't just always be like dying, deadline, no. Yeah.
Yes, same as the application deadline. Don't need to yeah, deadline, and yeah. Enjoy the process of finding out about the different schools and making your decision.
Yeah,
okay.
and
yeah.
Oh, sorry, if I can just add on to that, right?
Yeah.
I would also say it's important to listen to yourself and to be very honest with how you feel about different things that you try out, because as you go into this course, you might be exposed to a lot of different things, which is great, and your friends might be more polarized to one kind of design and whatever, right? It's most important that you are true to what you enjoy and what you're interested in. Yeah.
Okay, I think then it's great to kind of end today's session on that note. So thank you everyone for joining today's session. We do have one more Q&A, our very last one, lined up next Tuesday at 7 p.m. with Don, who's in this call right now. But yes, he will be joining us next Tuesday. So if you still have any lingering questions for us, you can join us next Tuesday. But if not, if you haven't already joined our Telegram group, we do have one set up where we have some tutors, some current students and alumni in that group. So you can join that to ask us questions at any time. But so yeah, then I think that is all for today. Thanks everyone for your time. Thanks Hans, Maggie, Ben for taking the time today to speak to everyone. And yeah, have a good weekend, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.